Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you here today. And it's my pleasure to welcome Gina Farinich, who is a senior leader at OutSystems. We're going to talk all things end user today. And Gina, to begin with, well, first of all, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. It's nice to be here with you in the virtual healthcare community.
That's right. Absolutely. We're all virtual. Just for one moment, just briefly tell me about yourself, and then we'll get going on the substantive questions around this topic.
Yeah, so Gina Farinich, I work for OutSystems, one of the leaders in the organization based in Southern California, specifically Laguna Niguel.
Which I love. Well, let's talk about a wonderful place to work. So let's talk about this concept of ease of use. And it's a really interesting concept because it can be looked at in a number of ways. But I know that you were interested in talking about ease of use at the level of architecture for IT and what that means in the healthcare context.
Yeah, so I think if we addressed ease of use, it's almost easier to talk about first what isn't easy in healthcare. And I think, as Mark, as you know, it's an industry where we've historically relied on a lot of collecting of information manually. And then on top of that, this is this layered effect, right? There's these large investments in legacy platforms. And I think most interesting to healthcare specifically is it's plagued with wonderful technologies that are very specific to healthcare, but then you have technologies that don't necessarily speak well to anything else. And all of that creates friction. And when you've got things like disjointed processes and silos of information, it really ultimately affects the way, the quality of service that IT can provide. And then it also affects this productivity across the entire organization. And I think if we dial that back a little bit, there are a couple of steps that, I see that can help ease that burden. And I think that first step would be definitely consolidating multiple disparate sources of data systems just to create that single source of truth. And then once you have that data transparency that's available to you, I think that next step is having a format which information then becomes consumable and digestible. And that's where a company like OutSystems, well, we can enable organizations to build these user interfaces, perfect user interfaces to deliver, and that's delivered by way of web and mobile. And then you have this super helpful way to serve up the data in multiple ways. And that's going to best serve any action of any user that's required. But that's still only part of the story. Then it's extremely important to IT and the business to also have hooks into what I'll just refer to as a power supply. And I know that's not a technical term per se, but that power supply is the way that an organization can ingest APIs. And that's really that connective tissue that's critical to communicate to all the systems and the data that you've invested in. And then when you've got that, the trifecta of this data transparency, and you've got this pixel perfect UI, and then you've got this connectivity to consume those APIs, well, then you have the right tools, obviously, to close the gaps that have been maybe crippling that workflow and automation and these processes. And then absolutely, you can build something that's smart, secure, a cohesive experience inside the organization, but then you can also flip that and turn it outside the organization to better collaborate with patients and partners as you choose.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the key elements in that is you've now created all of the connectivity in the background that then affords the end user a seamless view. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Yep.
And what
And
does a seamless view mean from your perspective?
yeah, and I'm probably hopeful, that a seamless view can be more than it is immediately available to us. But if I'm a patient, that seamless view is really this 360-degree experience, this end-to-end visibility of everything that's important to you with your personal health, that profile that's going to include, I don't know, your physicians, your medical background, your beneficiaries, everything under the sun, so you can track that like 24/7 on the device of your choice.
And for the clinician end user, what does that look like?
Yeah. In turn, the clinician, they should absolutely have the seamless view to be able to track activities that they're going to initiate on behalf of a patient. And that access absolutely should be easy to govern by the rules that you dictate that you need for security, audit, and compliance. And then I think, if the clinician's purview into the pursuit and progress of this patient's journey, if it's done well, that really gives them the confidence. Then they know they've completed their task. It solidifies the likelihood that you've built this wonderful, pleasant patient experience.
Yeah. What are the biggest challenges to getting to that level where you are providing a good user experience for clinicians and for patients? What are the challenges that have to be worked out first?
Oh gosh, I think there's many challenges, but I think it's just this cohesive approach of really just building a systematic approach throughout the organization, the orchestration throughout the whole healthcare community. And I think if you do that right, you're just going to be able to create time savings, and happy and knowledgeable patients and motivated and job satisfied healthcare employees. And, that's what's going to take to get these 360-degree experiences right. Mark, when I'm doing research and thinking about these kind of things, I was looking up a Gallup poll, and it's important because, it was talking about how Americans rank aspects of their life. And based on the research, and I don't mean this to get off topic, it'll draw me back in just a second, but it's not going to be a surprise to you. Based on their research, family is most important, healthcare is second, and then money is third. And 90% of Americans really rank their healthcare extremely important. And then 67% of Americans are ranking their money important. But as a consumer, think about this. We want 24/7 access to our money. We want the confidence that our money is in a secure place. We want a mobile app to get to our money, because at the end of the day, even though an organization is holding that for us, it's our money, right? And I think it's only natural then for Americans to think and want that same experience out of their healthcare providers and mimic what's been afforded to them by the banking community.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, Gina. And I think that one of the things that's happened among the billion other things that have happened during the pandemic is that healthcare consumers, and we're all consumers of healthcare at some point, are really waking up now to how inconvenient healthcare has been as an experience. We now really expect convenience and automation in everything, right? Like, one of the things, as we all know, that happened early on in the pandemic, when things were the most restricted, and in many places, a lot was shut down. There was a period where you almost couldn't go shopping, right? Except for groceries. So we all got used to ordering everything online and expecting it to arrive in 4 days or whatever. with the press of a button, right? Like click, I'm going to order a suit jacket or whatever your item is. Healthcare has never been like that. And it still isn't really. Speak to,
No, but
yeah, speak to that.
yeah. Well, I was just going to say we are making inroads, though. We're chipping away at this a little bit. And I'll bring to your attention, and I've given you that example of the comparison of banking institutions and healthcare institutions, and these seamless 360-degree experiences. But let's just take one of those examples that resonates across both of those industries. Call centers. For both industries, OutSystems as an organization, we're serving up that interface, that portal that comes between the provider and the user experience to track claims. And it's not just OutSystems technology involved in this process. It's common that we'll use conversational bots, because that's amazing technology too, a framework that can play nicely, layering in these experiences. And that's another component to this when I talked about the integration capabilities and to be able to leverage other technologies and build something really smart. And I know of a customer that we work with, Life Healthcare, for example. They offloaded all this predictable, high human touch, high volume questions and answers, routing their customers again through these other channels, web and mobile apps. And of course, it doesn't mean you're going to derail your call center, because for critical healthcare needs, absolutely, you want that touch point of a human. But guess what? The company now saves in operational costs, in future predictable costs, with staffing that. And people are so happy to do their job and know that they came to work today and maybe solving a life problem, versus, hello, where's your office? Or, like, what's the phone number to this,
Well,
So
and you can,
I just wanted to,
yeah, exactly. You're tiering things, TIER.
yes,
You're tiering things
yes,
so that there's so many things that healthcare consumers, there's so many types of information that healthcare consumers can access where you don't need to speak to a live person on the phone. And by tiering that, using bots or whatever the technology is, you're saving the human being for the times when they're needed, rather than having to have a billion human beings.
yeah, that you couldn't have said it any better. And I mean, I do have to be honest with you, because I think we're making great strides. But as a reminder, no matter how dynamic we get with these use cases and these situations, customers still, because it's 90%, when I was giving that statistic of 90% importance, customers still are going to hold healthcare providers to the highest standard when it comes to, service, quality, and value. And that's why I wanted to also make this point, pick these modern technologies that complement your strategic vision. So important to take the time to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what should senior healthcare IT leaders, CIOs, CTOs, et cetera, be thinking and doing right now?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think overall, you're going to, absolutely have to break through the silos of information and open up lines of communication across the organization to get through to your vision. And my goodness, don't be afraid to dig deep into the logic and the processes that you established long ago. I remind people that I'm talking to, Mark, this technology is a journey. Like, we're not going to ever get to the final destination, because like you mentioned with COVID, perfect example, healthcare always has to take on unforeseen circumstances. And it's finding those technologies that can ride that tide with you. And thoroughly think through those processes.
Yeah, absolutely. So in all of that, I love that you use the word journey. What does the journey look like for the healthcare system in the next 2-3 years?
Oh gosh, well, there's so much to unpack there. I think in the next 2-3 years, hopefully we have a recipe that allows us to get out of this pickle, and the pickle is the place that what gets us stuck because we have relied on routineness. And I would have to share with you, and I don't think this is mystery, like we're still printing things in healthcare. We're still using fax machines because of the convenience. And we've got to remove that burden because we've gotten comfortable with it. And what I mean by the pickle is the flip side of that is that no one likes working with legacy technology either. It's scary to change, but you can't take on an enormous change in one full swoop. So that's where I think, what you can be doing to plan for an outcome is not necessarily a rip and replace like overnight. Think of ways in which you can create a safe zone. And you can absolutely start simple to unharness, this friction. And maybe there's just 1, 2, I don't know, 3 areas of low-hanging fruit at the end of the day that you want to chip away at and work to resolve. And don't lose sight of that long-term vision, but just plan accordingly. And that's the way, low code, the beautiful thing about any kind of low code technology, it's going to allow you to stage that activity. That removes the fear. The fear factor is always like, what's that adoption going to be like? How can I mitigate that risk? How do I know what I'm getting, what I'm going to ask my organization for in advance? And I think if you do the legwork in designing the right methodology up front, and then you take on a low-code way of about approaching that activity, you're going to get to that outcome because it's going to allow you to think through like a DevOps strategy where you can test and then you can automate those processes and fine-tune them and park them in a parking lot and then come back to them as you start to build out that strategy. I can give you, if you want, we work with a Nashville-based leading hospital physician group, and they wanted to overhaul their case reconciliation process. And when you have a big process like this, just like I said, it's enormous. And there's going to be this case history piece, and there's going to be a provider submission piece, and there's going to be reporting. Ultimately, they're going to want to get to the mobile app, but they can't do all of that immediately. And we wouldn't suggest that they do that. Have the plan, but start with the piece that's not providing you the data transparency today. And for them, that was this case history element. And they can start designing that in the workflow. And then they can create, I think what's important to every healthcare organization is their brand and their logo. But then once you have that, put that in a parking lot and save that when you get to the next element that you're going to start to design. And then that work effort's going to go just that much faster because, you can work in these parallel processes and you're not having to understand someone's line of code and look through that and interpret. And you can actually pull in your colleagues that are part of the business that are users in this experience early on in the process to get their validation. And by the time you get to that mobile app, my goodness, you're just going to have the flow down packed. And that's how you're really going to get the value out of technology. And that's where changes and the flow become natural and easy then to automate, a whole entire process that's been established. I know we can track that way so much faster than using traditional development.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. And what I really like about what you just said, Gina, is that this combination of, on the one hand, being strategic, thinking about the big picture, but also not trying to boil the ocean at the same time. In other words, being really strategic, saying this is where we're going in our journey, but we're not going to do everything all at once because that never works out. So.
Yeah. Stage your activity, learn those lessons. You're gonna develop champions along the way that are gonna help you carry out your vision. because they love what you've been be able to do in their small little capacity. And that's what you need, because it's really an evolution. You are changing the way you did something historically, and you're going to need every person in the organization helping you fight that battle. And it's not a bad battle to fight, as long
Right.
as you're planning strategically for that change.
Exactly. Exactly. Beautifully said. So, in our last remaining couple minutes, any final advice?
Oh my gosh. Well, I would say, um, there have been so many advances in the adoption of technology over the course of the last, I don't know, year and a half. Telehealth portals for COVID tracking and testing. Everyone involved in those kind of efforts definitely deserve a pat on the back for all of that progress that's been made. And I think that's, was the first step really in locking ourselves from the old way of doing things. So I think thinking through, like I was saying, taking time to look at the execution strategy, work with those technologies that you've made those investments in your organization. What are the digital underpinnings that are important to you? I know there's things like single sign-on, ERP providers, on-premise hybrid cloud strategies, certainly your security posture. You want to, understand how all of those elements are going to play in formulating a plan for change. And I would absolutely come to the table with a governance plan.
Yeah.
Ask your vendor to help you formulate that, because that they do this day in and day out every day. And change management's super hard. But if you set those realistic expectations up for yourself and with appropriate milestones, then you're going to be in an area in a way suited for progress, and then you're going to absolutely need to help yourself accountable and your stakeholders accountable and your vendor accountable. I think
Yeah.
that's how we get through something like this, for sure.
That's
One last
wonderful.
comment though
For sure.
on that, if we have time, is just please encourage innovation. And I think if you form a task force that's diverse in the talent pool across the area, not just IT, the business, the users, people from different cultures, all of that insight is really going to help you lead this change.
Absolutely. Wonderful advice, Gina. That's perfect. So, I really appreciate your spending time with us today. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Mark, for having me. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. So this concludes this session. And again, thank you to Gina for being with us. And thank you for viewing this. Have a great day, everyone.